Hey, welcome to Plants on My Therapy. Today we're rescuing a philodendron. Yesterday I helped a friend who had to clean up her rental. The tenants have already moved to the mainland and they left a couple plants. This plant was found hanging by a glass sliding door facing west, and since the tenants took their curtains, it had to endure direct light for about a week. All in all, this plant did pretty good, so I brought it home. I soaked it in the koi pond overnight, and then I removed all the soil from the plant. I was hoping, maybe it was too much to hope for, that the plant would just separate into strands of plants that would be easily propagated, but this plant is tangled. The roots, well, it was root bound. The plant looks healthy and the plant looks pretty good for what it's been through. This is probably why philodendrons make one of the best house plants. They can tolerate low light. They prefer indirect light. They will thrive in bright indirect light, but they don't like direct light. But I can only assume that when the tenants had this plant and had their curtains up, that this plant enjoyed filtered light. This plant is actually in pretty good shape for what it's been through. It was in western exposure for about a week. It was bone dry when we found it, and it still looks pretty good. It's slightly singed, but it doesn't have any disease. The tenants left two plants on the balcony that is just loaded with mealybugs. But this plant's actually in pretty good shape. I can't separate this plant because the roots are too tangled, so I'm just going to trim the long tendrils to propagate them, and then I'm going to repot this plant in fresh potting soil and put it somewhere it's going to get bright indirect light, and within days this plant is going to recover. This plant, philodendrons, is one of the best house plants because it is very hardy and it's going to recover fast. And this Brazil version, it's beautiful. It's the heart-leafed philodendron is nice, but this Brazil version with the variegation is beautiful. Now with the roots over here, the longer roots, I'm just going to trim off, and hopefully that's going to stimulate the formation of new roots without this plant strangling itself. But well, look at these roots. These roots are healthy. There's no root rot. There's no fungus. These roots are healthy, and some of the tendrils have already set down roots, so I'm going to try and work them into the new pot. I'm going to use my potting recipe that's I developed over a lot of trials and errors. I also bought this hanging pot that is a self-watering pot. I'm not comfortable, I'm not used to self-watering pots, but I'm just gonna have to get used to new things. Anyways, my soil recipe is 2 parts potting soil, 1 part of perlite for aeration, moisture, and drainage, 1 part of volcanic cinder for aeration and drainage, and about a half a part of orchid bark to help absorb some of the nutrients, so not all the nutrients will escape with the drainage water. I looked into self-watering pots, and I think I understand how it works. So I'm putting down an old coffee filter. I'm putting down gravel for drainage. I'm going to fill it up about 3/4 full with the potting mix. Then I'm going to secure the plant in this pot, being careful to spread out the roots, kind of flats. They'll work their way down, but I just don't want it to work their way around and strangle themselves. Also, the tendrils that have the roots on it already, I'm going to make sure that they're in the pot, and then they're going to be rooted into my potting recipe. The top layer of soil will just be plain potting soil. My potting mixture has perlite in it, and if your potting mixture has perlite or vermiculite in it, the perlite and vermiculite will float to the top after frequent watering, and then you will have this layer of moist perlite or vermiculite that will attract slugs if you leave it outside, and gnats. Finally, I'm going to top it off with sand. The sand will help prevent the wind from dusting out the soil or the water from washing out the soil, and it also will form a denser layer on the top of the soil to decrease the rate of evaporation. I'm going to keep this plant outside in the bright indirect sun where it can thrive. In a couple of days it's going to look great. Watch as I gently water the plant. The sand and the soil will gently mix, forming a new layer that is slightly denser that will protect the plant. This plant rescue was a success. This plant will recover in this bright indirect light area, protected from direct light, and in a few weeks it's going to look great. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to make another video of how I propagated the cuttings. People don't like long videos, so I'm trying to shorten my videos. Anyways, thank you very much. Thank you all of you who subscribed. Aloha.